acquisition system. So today I want to walk you through why I think a 90-day roadmap at the beginning of any relationship is very, very important. I have been in digital advertising for 20 years, and I was fortunate enough to sort of grow up, so to speak, in a large agency, Fortune 500 client environment, and that is where I was first introduced to 90-day roadmaps. So at the beginning of every client relationship, sometimes if it was during a formal pitch process with a really large brand, we would map out, here is your 90-day plan. And I think that this is just a timeless strategy. It helps you define the growth partnership between the agency and the client. It gets you laser focused on goal setting, and ultimately it sets clear expectations and milestones where everyone is aligned and clear about the shared objectives from day one. A lot of agencies and freelancers, marketers, etc., kind of skip this step, and I think that that's a huge mistake because I think that at the outset of any partnership, having alignment on goals and milestones and tasks and what to expect over the first 90 days is so vitally important to a successful relationship. So, I'm going to walk you through today, hypothetically, what your first 90 days with Alpine Analytics, my agency, would look like. So, after we've signed the contract, and of course, there's lots of discussion and sometimes education that's going on during the discovery process. And so you already have an idea of what to expect, of course. But let's get into kind of the nitty gritty. So, day one through day 30, we have a onboarding meeting. This usually lasts 90 minutes. We want to fully audit the existing accounts if there are existing accounts, make sure they're aligned with best practices, even accounts that we've inherited from other agencies that I would say understand paid search or paid media well. They may have been a generalist agency and perhaps they don't understand healthcare at an intimate level. They may not understand, HIPAA or Google Ads or other platforms, healthcare requirements and policies because it is a heavily regulated industry. And so, that's one of the first things we want to look at. Like, are we aligned with healthcare best practices and HIPAA? And then from there, are we aligned with, is the structure of the account aligned with what we would consider best practices? And then one of the main things that sets us apart from 99% of other agencies out there is we extend our lead intelligence platform free of cost to all clients because we believe this is table stakes and should be the foundation of every successful marketing partnership and every successful paid media or marketing campaign. So we want to make sure that that's fully implemented, that we've walked our clients through it, that their front office staff understands how to use it. It's pretty straightforward, but we want to make sure that the onboarding process is very thorough. So we want to hear in your words, like what happens when a prospective patient contacts you. Um, is there SMS? Is there email? Is there an email campaign? Of course, you're trying to get them on the call right away to book an appointment, but like, what does that follow-up process look like? Because with our lead intelligence platform, we are able to track leads from all sources, whether they came to your website directly because they're already familiar with you, whether they came through a paid media campaign like Meta or Google or Reddit or YouTube, whether they came through a blog post, so an organic listing, Google business profile, right? Like any and every source we're able to track, and you will get a real-time lead alert in your inbox. And so that is something really sets us apart, and that's something that we want to make sure your front office staff is very comfortable using from day one. And then the second piece of it is, not only with healthcare, there are additional considerations because it's so heavily regulated by the advertising platforms. There's a lot of things you can and can't do, and there is a lot of, I'd say, misconception and confusion around some of those topics that are related to how healthcare is regulated. So we want to get very clear on, where we're limited, what the workarounds are. Do we need custom landing pages? Do we have legit script certification? If we have restricted drug terms like Botox on our existing website. Like you can't run Google ads to a website that has Botox or other restricted drug term language on the website. So if you don't want to get legit script certified, the way that we go around that is we work with you to build custom landing pages. We have a design and dev team, and we have templates for that we've seen worked well for various procedures. But, you still want it to be in your words, and, that takes a little bit of time to get those fully approved and designed and implemented. And so beyond all of that, though, there are just regular advertiser, regardless of what industry you're in, there are requirements that you have to go through. So, for example, for a client of ours that want to run local service ads, which we think is a great pay per lead way to dominate your local market, that can take 3 to 5 weeks. You have to go through a background check and you have to provide business documentation. And so if you've never done that before, that can take 3 to 5 weeks just to be fully verified by Google so that you can launch those campaigns. Also, there is advertiser verification from the Google Ads side, and that's for all advertisers across all industries. That doesn't take as long, but if you hit a snag, that could also take a couple of weeks. And so I think that for anyone out there, promising a performance guarantee, or, any marketer or freelancer or agency that promises a performance guarantee in a short amount of time, I just don't agree with that. I think if you really know what you're doing, particularly in healthcare, the first 30 days is really going to be setting the stage and building the proper foundation for success over the long run. And so we just like to be very clear with our clients. Like, yes, technically you could launch a campaign in a couple of days as far as, the work it takes to build the campaign itself out, but there's a lot of other considerations that go into this. Okay, then day 30, approximately day 30, sometimes earlier, sometimes a little bit later. It just depends on the client and how long the approvals take, how many landing pages they need custom designed, and all of those things that I just, touched on. But approximately around day 30, we have all the campaigns and accounts fully verified, live. And then, especially with how the advertising platforms bidding algorithms work today, they leverage machine learning and AI, which is great because they take into account multiple signals in real time, like location, previous browsing history, and so on, that you wouldn't be able to replicate manually as a human, right? So that's the upside, and that's a big upside. The downside, the short-term downside, is that any machine learning AI powered anything, but in the case of advertising platforms, bidding algorithms, those models require a robust data set to perform well. They need a lot of data so that they can make intelligent bidding decisions to accomplish your goals. And that is usually going to take between days 30 and day 90. Now, if you have a robust budget, which that's a separate topic, we also have a monthly budget calculator on our website. I like to walk clients through that, sometimes during the first call, but definitely at least during the discovery process, because that's one question in my 20 years of running digital advertising that I've been asked more times than I can count, right? Like, what is the budget I need to be successful? And we want to make sure that we have a visual aid to walk you through that with clear math and clear inputs so that you can decide, hey, if it's 10,000 a month, that's not something I feel comfortable with. Okay, let's talk about alternative options. Maybe Google Ads isn't a great place to start for you, for example. Regardless, though, even if you do have a budget where you're not limited by budget each day, which would be ideal, it's still going to take likely 60 days to get enough data within your account for the bidding algorithms to be able to optimize ideally. So let's go through days 30 through 90. We are essentially in the data acquisition phase. So we're either restructuring your account, we are building your account from scratch, we are monitoring performance signals, optimizing creative, targeting, spend, right? There's lots of little micro testing. And I say micro testing because we're not yet at a phase where we have a robust data set that allows for true A/B testing that's going to be statistically viable, right? We're not there yet. That's going to come later We have to get enough data within the account before we can move into more advanced testing, but we are going to be doing what I call micro testing. Maybe we want to try a different bidding strategy, or, maybe we want to tweak an ad a little bit based on some of the creative performance and so on. And then we're really just letting the algorithms acquire clean data. Now, I say clean data because what most agencies do and what most advertisers do is they're using a Google tag, a meta tag, a Reddit tag, right? Any other tracking tag that is provided by the advertising platform, because that is the way most of that tracking technology works out of the box, so to speak. It's debatable whether that's fully HIPAA compliant. I'd say it's not, because you can't sign a BAA. And then beyond that, even if you're not in healthcare, those advertising platforms are really good at hitting your objectives. So, for example, if you have a bidding strategy that is maximize conversions in Google Ads, in layman's terms, you're telling Google to maximize your leads within your daily budget, right? It's great at doing that. What it's not great at doing is deciphering between a good lead and a bad lead. So Google is going to view someone that called looking for a job, which would be completely irrelevant, and someone calling to book a mommy makeover consultation, which would be highly relevant. It's going to view those leads exactly the same unless you tell it otherwise. So what our lead intelligence platform does is it captures the lead with its own tracking tag first. Your practice is then alerted in real time, and only after your practice marks a lead as qualified does it then push that lead into the advertising platforms like Google Ads or Meta Ads, and it becomes a conversion or a lead within those platforms. So this is a better way to do it because the algorithms are learning off of quality lead data versus lead data that has junk leads mixed in with it, right? It also takes more time because since you're only sending qualified lead data in, then it has a smaller set of lead data to work with, right? But these are shorter term limitations. It's setting you up for longer term success. And so I think, again, just to educate our clients on why this is so critically important is really the goal of why I'm walking through this today. And then ultimately by day 90, you want to have 30 qualified leads, 30 qualified conversions in your advertising account within the last 30-day window, because that's how Google Ads and some of these platforms really work. Is not only do they need a robust data set, but they need it to have recency as well. So then let's move on to, days 90 plus. Now we have the correct foundation. And one of the analogies that I like to use is you wouldn't take a home that you purchased that had a cracked foundation and go build a fancy addition on it, right? That wouldn't be a wise use of your money. That wouldn't be very fiscally responsible, and it just logically wouldn't make sense. You would first want to fix the foundation, make sure you had a solid foundation before you have plans for expanding. You want to think about your Google Ads account or another advertising platform account in a similar fashion. You've got to take the time to build the proper solid foundation before you can then move into some of these more sophisticated strategies and tactics. So our goal is always the day 90 plus, and sometimes it's sooner. I wouldn't say it's usually sooner than day 60 though. That would be the exception and not the rule. The rule would be days 90 plus. You now shift to smarter optimizations. You can start being stricter with how you qualify leads. So for example, in the first 60 to 90 days, any lead that's relevant, meaning they called or submitted a consultation form, or if you have a live chat, they live chatted with AI or someone at your practice about booking a consultation that is relevant, right? They could be a relevant prospective patient. They're calling about a procedure that you do perform. But for whatever reason, they may not be ready to pull the trigger yet and come in for a consultation. Or maybe they did come in for a consultation, but it's a little bit too expensive, or they need more time to think about it, or they have to consult with their spouse. Like any number of things that are really out of my control and out of your control as a practice owner. Initially, anything that's relevant that that could be a scenario where they could turn into a patient would be qualified. When you get to days 90 and beyond, you have enough of that data in the account. So then you can be a little bit stricter about, okay, maybe you want to start qualifying leads for only people that actually came in and at least had a consultation, right? Just as one example. And you could even get stricter with that over time. But you're never going to get there if you don't first be a little bit looser about your lead qualification so that you can give these algorithms and this machine learning enough data to work from. And this is a mistake I see a lot of advertisers make. They just think, oh, it's not working. We're a couple months in. We've spent, $10,000, $15,000, and it is working, but you've got to be willing to play the long game here. So you're then evaluating your lead quality and your volume. Perhaps you're getting stricter with your lead qualification, like we just touched on. And then you want to move into a bidding strategy that layers on efficiency. And what I mean by that is oftentimes up to day 90, you are on a bid strategy like maximize conversions in Google Ads, where you're just trying to maximize lead acquisition. But you don't want to be doing that forever. Once you have enough data, you then want to move into what's called tCPA bidding, which is an acronym for target cost per acquisition bidding. So now you have enough of that conversion volume. The system is intelligent to understand which users are likely to be a qualified lead. And now you want to layer on that efficiency target. And let's say you have enough data and you understand that for a mommy makeover procedure, we like to create campaigns at the procedural level because they do perform differently. Your profit's going to be different for each of those. The cost to acquire those patients by procedure may also be different. We want to have clean insights into that data. So you may find for mommy makeover that because that is going to be a more expensive procedure than some of the other ones like blepharoplasty, labiaplasty, and so on, that your target cost per acquisition is $500, right? Because you know that the return on investment there is going to make sense if you ultimately get paid $20,000 for that procedure. Um, with another type of procedure, like if you're a med spa and someone's coming in for microneedling, your target cost per acquisition may be $75, right? Because maybe you're making $200 on that first visit, and then maybe over the lifetime value, if that's a returning patient, a returning customer, that lifetime value is more like $5,000 to $10,000. So these are things over time that you can become more sophisticated in the way you think about it. You have more data to really inform your bidding strategy and your marketing strategy. And so then you can understand, okay, I want to remain profitable, not only as a whole for my marketing efforts, and then a layer down as a whole for my Google Ads account, right? But then also by a specific procedural campaign. And so these are the types of things we're moving into in days 90 and beyond. And you've stabilized your results. So now you can not only prep for scaling, but now you can also prepare for more sophisticated testing. Maybe there's some new promotional periods coming up and you want to test that with your ad copy and your landing pages. Maybe there's some audiences that you want to test. Landing page buttons, you want to test different colors, right? To see if you can get your conversion rate to go up even 5%. Because that ultimately means more leads for the same cost, right? So there, you want to get into those more sophisticated tactics and tests when you move beyond that 90-day period. And then lastly, I've already touched on this, but our belief is that a 90-day roadmap where you're aligning with your client on the objectives and the timelines and what to expect, plus a lead intelligence platform, that results in a strategic growth partnership that is built to be successful and built to last. And here is a screenshot that gives you a peek under the hood of a lead intelligence client's dashboard. This is just a sample data, but you can put in, the quote value would be what the patient paid for the procedure. The sales value could be, what your profit amount is or your net revenue amount is. If you had OR cost or anesthesia cost, if you're a plastic surgeon, you can see both of those in here. You can see how many leads you had by day, what type of lead. Is it a form? Is it a call? Is it an appointment, etc.? Were they quotable, which means qualified? Are they pending? Maybe you're still trying to get in touch with the person. Were they not quotable, right? And then the conversion rate here, 79% of your leads were in fact quotable, which is fantastic. So all of this not only holds us as an agency at Alpine Analytics incredibly accountable to our clients, but it also gives our clients a very clear view of how are their marketing dollars impacting their bottom line, right? We're not reporting on vanity metrics like most agencies, like, oh, your lead volume went up month over month and your cost per lead came down from $100 to $75. Isn't that fantastic? It's like, well, not really if, 80% of the leads weren't even relevant. So this gives you just a holistic, very real view into how your marketing dollars are performing. And again, we think that this is something that sets us apart from 99% of other agencies. If you are a med spa owner or plastic surgeon that would like to book a strategy call with me, I will leave a link to my calendar in the video description below. I'd love to meet you and just chat about, where you are, where you're trying to go, and see if we might be the agency to help you get there. Hope this was helpful.